In today's episode, take you to court? Why I didn't know you felt that way. Don't scan the package, enter the number manually. Alrighty then. You keep having my time estimates? You're right, my estimates should be more reliable. So let's get started. Take you to court? Why I didn't know you felt that way. This chain of events started almost 20 years ago, and involves myself and a notoriously snooty national real estate agency. There is a bit of background leading to the MC incident, so please bear with me. This all occurred in QLD, Australia. I once rented a property through an agency from 2004 to 2006. Due to my ex-partner's explosive and violent temper, we had been handed an eviction notice. There was damage to the property that was unfixed at the time we were evicted. Damage that was in the form of fist and hammer-sized holes in walls, etc. We obviously did not receive any of the bond deposit back, as the repair costs more than absorbed the amount. There was also an added sum of about $1,700 extra to cover the rest of the costs incurred repairing the damage. This amount was forwarded to a debt collections agency. This collection amount was in both of our names as we had jointly been on the lease agreement. I was not upset at the agency, they were just doing their job by being a good advocate for the owner of the property at this stage. Taking the bond and charging us for the repair was standard and not nasty, vindictive, or overkill in the slightest. My anger came later. Although I must admit I was a bit miffed to be duly held financially responsible for the damage caused by my ex, but due to the nature of the joint lease not much could be legally done. I was just grateful we had parted ways not long after. A few years post-eviction, I wanted to get my life more organized in many areas and tie up any loose ends that would impede me moving forward. A clean slate, so to speak. So the debt issue came first. After many phone calls and some paperwork exchange, plus an escalation or two, the debt collection agency finally agreed to split the $1,700 damages bill between the ex and myself. Now I could pay off half and not be held accountable for his portion any longer. This had to be done without his consent, as he refused. I'm unsure as to why, possibly hoping I would pay the whole lot to rebuild my credit rating, or most likely just to be annoying. Once I had paid off my portion of the collector's debt, I thought I was done with the whole business and the black mark against my name. Not so, unfortunately. It turned out that the state I lived in had a blacklist that real estate agencies and lessors could add tenants' names to. It's called the TICA list. All they needed was proof that the tenant had behaved in a bad enough manner regarding renting of a property to warrant being listed. Due to the fact we had been evicted, the damage, and also owed arrears to a debt agency for repairs, we unfortunately qualified. Being on this list made it almost impossible to rent, especially via a real estate agency. After speaking extensively with the RTA, which is a government agency, I found I was definitely eligible to have my name removed from the list, so I started taking action for this to happen. I was able to demonstrate good faith by having paid for half of the damages. It also went in my favor that my partner was abusive, and there was legal evidence of this fact. However, I was told the only way to have my name removed was by the real estate agency. So I approached them and asked for them to do so. They were very helpful initially. If I was able to show them proof that the debt was settled, they were happy to remove my name. At least 7 years had elapsed by this point, so it was considered punishment enough. At the time, after 5 years, your name is usually removed from the TICA list. However, this company apparently kept tabs on who they had added to the list, and when the person's 5 years expired, they just added them again. Dirty tactics indeed. Obviously, I had been re-added. So I provided relevant documents to the agency, and was assured my name would be removed as soon as they located my file. This apparently had been stored away in archives, as much time had passed since I rented with them. I was told this would take a week maximum. All good. So I called a week later and was told to wait another week, still in a kind, helpful, and cordial tone. I called again after that time and was told to wait, you guessed it, another week, and this time I detected a tone of frost in the reply. So I called back more than a week later just to show patience, and now was spoken to in a very haughty manner. I was informed that my request was bothersome. Being so because what I asked was not important and finding my file was a waste of their staff time. They would call me when they got around to it. I expressed how important it was personally, and then heard the magic words, almost verbatim, "If you want us to do this so badly, we will only be forced to help you if ordered. Perhaps you should take us to court if you can't be patient. Goodbye. String me along? Okay, game on." I had a feeling this was all done to avoid removing my name as they had found my file. Also that they were stalling and wanted me to stay blacklisted. But I wasn't backing down without a fight, and so I took their advice. I filed against them to have the matter seen in a small claims court. It cost me $35, which would be reimbursed by the agency if I won. I didn't have anything to lose, and I wanted them to know that not all people will hold indefinitely, or continue to be unjustly punished for longer than fair. It was listed to appear in about 4 days from filing. As soon as they received the court date paperwork, I was suddenly bombarded with phone calls. How dare I take the agency to court when they were working their hardest to find my file and help me? Doing my best to sound apologetic for taking their advice, I thanked them for the suggestion, as it seemed there would now be a time frame at least for the matter to be dealt with. On the day of court, I had 3 sheets of paper as my sole evidence. A statement showing that repair bill had been paid and there was no finances outstanding. A statement from the RTA that I was eligible to have my name taken off the TICA list. And lastly, a document stating it was at the behest of the real estate agency to remove my name, and that they had no good reason not to. Not 1 but 2 agents for the company showed up to court. When it came before the judge, both parties had to give evidence if relevant. I handed in my 3 pages. Seeing them pass the judge a thick folder of paperwork, including photos of the property damage, was rather amusing considering they supposedly couldn't find my file when last requested. The judge asked them for a statement. They went on for a few minutes about why I didn't deserve to be removed, and justified their stance with the photos and prior rental history with them. All I had to reply was that I had paid for my share of the damage, that the damage was due to my abusive ex, and that I had made restitution as much as I could regarding the matter. With no money owing. The judge then asked why I had brought it to court. I explained that the company was dragging their feet removing my name when it was a simple matter, and it wasn't necessarily fair to do so. That I had called them repeatedly and waited while they found my, so hard to locate, paperwork that had somehow miraculously appeared when convenient. That being on the TICA list was harmful to my future chances at renting, and also that my name had been resubmitted after dropping off the list. The judge queried them why they had added my name again. They stated it was company policy. The judge expressed agreement with my stance. I had been punished enough, had made financial restitution, and now that my file had been located, I was not to be blacklisted anymore. Case decided in my favor. Win. The real estate agency was given 48 hours to submit proof to the court, and a copy to myself, that I was now off the list. Also, they had to pay for the $35 I spent taking them to court. The pair of agents walked out in a huff and were on the phone out in the hallway immediately after vacating the courtroom. I floated past them as I was on a justice high. As I got to the lifts, I thanked them for coming and their sound advice in recommending court. Also that I was grateful for the bottle of wine they would be buying me with the $35 I was to be paid back. The look on their faces was priceless. Don't scan the package, enter the number manually. Alrighty then. This was over a decade ago at a package shipping company. As a loader, I would scan a package and place it in the trailer so it could go to wherever it was going. Easy job. I'd pop my headphones in and easily meet the 300 package per hour (pph) minimum they set. I was the second fastest loader in the building, actually, with a guy we'll call Rick, who worked on the other end of the facility, being the first. So every couple years we get a new manager. This new manager comes in and right away just starts wanting numbers to improve. Any that weren't making their goal, he wants to make their goal ASAP. He was the type of manager who always found something wrong no matter how good we did. He was also the type of manager to use the word family, which I hate. We were a family supposedly. Even though our reward system was abolished in favor of management meals prior to work. One thing he wanted to improve was the packages that were entered manually instead of scanning them. It made no sense. It was a number that had no impact on anything. But he wanted just one entered by each employee daily, and we complied. Every day I'd do my one. But one day we arrived and apparently there was a miscommunication between the employees about our start time. We arrived to a trashed area with packages everywhere. The supervisor looked horrified. You see, when you get backed up, it's hard to recover. And stopping the conveyor belt only makes it worse because you take a shot of packages again due to the unload not stopping. It makes for a rough night. So I put on my scanner and directed the supervisor to follow me. I went in the last trailer on the belt and me and a coworker went straight beast mode and saved the night. Hardest nights work outside of the holidays, honestly. I clocked out after and went home. The next day I arrive and the manager pulls me to the side. I figure I'd get some appreciation for my efforts. Maybe some recognition in the form of a cheap hat or something. Nope, he rips into me. Why didn't I key enter my one package? With all those packages yesterday I had the opportunity. He claimed I was being lazy and had the union rep around so he could give me a verbal warning. So with my saying it won't happen again. Cue compliance. I key enter every package that night. Did not scan one. At first my supervisor thought it was funny. But when the area took a hit I kept going. He asked me to stop and I said no, I'm still doing my job. The manager came with the union rep outside my truck, but even entering the tracking numbers manually, I was over the 300 pph required. They couldn't touch me even though I normally do 200 plus more per hour. The night ended and my supervisor came to talk to me. He said that was impressive and gave me a cheap hat. I laughed and thanked him. I commented that I definitely got the most key entered package that night. My supervisor looked at me and smiled. Nope, you're second, Rick beat you by about 50. The same exact thing happened to him. And I was still second place. But I got my hat at least. You keep having my time estimates? You're right, my estimates should be more reliable. A couple of decades ago, I was working as the only technical writer in a fairly large team of developers. Our manager was Cambridge educated, liked to cut estimates, and was particularly convinced that my job was easy and quick, and that I was lazy and terrible at estimates. He'd point out that the worst typist could type a page of text in an hour, so I should be getting through at least 8 pages of user manual a day. When he had my time estimates and gave me the new deadlines, I, like the doofus I was, slaved away, worked unpaid overtime, and squeaked on over the line. And then usually ended up taking a couple of days sick leave to recover. That eventually got me called into HR for being unreliable. Humph. Something in me snapped at that point. The next project, the same scenario played out. I gave my quite good time estimates, he poo-pooed them and have them, I shrugged and accepted his pronouncement. He pointed out that I really needed to get better at estimating my time. MC time. 2 weeks before the end of the 2-month project, he asked for an update. Oh, I'm a bit over a third of the way through the documentation, I said calmly, as though there wasn't a deadline staring me in the face. He blinked and asked for an explanation. Well, I told you it would take 4 months to do the amount of documentation you asked for, and it looks as though if I don't do any overtime, it's actually pretty close to correct, based on my progress so far. I beamed at him as though I was completely unaware that he had managers and a CTO who were expecting my documentation based on the information he gave them along with the product it's describing, of course. Much to my surprise, it didn't even seem to occur to him to yell at me. The sheer confidence with which I delivered the devastating news had utterly confused him. He ended up helping me to cut down the requirements and then finish completing the documentation to meet the deadline. I worked my usual hours, and if he asked me to do overtime, played dumb and said, "No, sorry, I get sick if I do that, so I don't anymore." He worked a lot of overtime. I would walk past his office to see him staring at his computer monitor, biting his fingernails, and looking very, very worried. He wrote a lot of substandard documentation, and being a perfectionist, that really upset him. He didn't see his family much for 2 weeks. I spent a lot of my time at work trying not to cackle like a warlock who's had one too many pep pills. Once he had some time to recover, he called me into his office to discuss new ways of estimating time for documentation, and carefully suggested that maybe half a page to a page of documentation a day was a fair general estimate? Maybe? And perhaps at some point we should look at hiring a second tech writer. Thanks for watching.